Ruby Wax is a comedian, actress and author. She has 3 children and lives with her husband in London. But Ruby was born in the United States.
My parents left from Vienna, Austria, and they went to Chicago, Illinois. I think they left 1939. They were fleeing because they were Jewish, and they took the war with them and brought it to our kitchen. Then finally, when I was 18, I came to London because I needed safety. They escaped out of Europe, and I escaped back into it again.
Ruby found a job with the Royal Shakespeare Company, but colleagues suggested she turn her hand to comedy.
I made my comedy shows out of my parents, which really got me launched. They gave me great lines. They had those accents that sounded like air raid sirens. So it was always, you know, it was always alarming. You know, that's good, that kind of, you order something off the menu, it sounds like you're declaring war.
Ruby's stage shows led on to greater things.
Somebody put me together with French and Saunders and said, would I write with them? And that was a match made in heaven. I was on TV 25 years.
Then, in the 1990s, Ruby was admitted to the Priory, a mental health hospital.
Somebody diagnosed depression, and I was taken away and put in an institution.
Now Ruby's mission is to promote better understanding of mental illness.
I went to Oxford and learned about cognitive therapy and mindfulness, and now that's my obsession. If anybody's thinking of writing a book or a show about mental illness, skip it, okay? Because it's my turf. It's mine. I think that I have lived most of my life in a high anxiety state, and so I want to know where that came from. And I keep blaming my parents. It would be interesting to know who they're blaming. Do you think you have problems because of your parents? Yes. And I won't stop until I figure out how these people were made and who they were.
Nearly 20 years ago, Ruby made a remarkable discovery in the attic of her late parents' house. The leather suitcase her mother carried out of Austria in the 1930s. Inside were hundreds of documents and photographs, clues to a history her parents barely spoke of.
They fled from Vienna, Austria, from the Nazis, because they were Jewish. I don't think they had a choice. So I found all these pictures, but I don't know who they are. Nobody ever mentioned it. I'd like to find out who they were. I found some letters. Who wrote these? It says, Meine Liebe, which is my dear, and then it's signed Ella and Salo. I don't know who they are. Oh, look, here she is, my mother. She had hysteria, which I don't know if they call it that anymore, but, you know, screaming. She would come up with lines like, run with the hyenas, run. And when you go to bed with dogs, you wake up with fleas. And then suddenly she would shout, Toscanini. It was the language, was nuts. This is my dad. My dad was handsome and violent. You know, my dad would chase me with a belt and say, how dare you speak to your mother like that? Meanwhile, he was using it on her. My dad loved America, but my mother never adjusted. Coming to America was not my mom's idea of success, and then really didn't like my dad, because he was as she called him, a torturer. Obviously, they must have had a hideous relationship. So they assumed I was insane. So I was sent to shrinks all the time who had no idea. A few of them said, your mother is a basket case. Seriously, something wasn't right. But I didn't know as a kid. I thought everybody had those parents. But was it in their genes? Or was it something that happened to them?
An only child, Ruby was told fragmentary stories about her parents' past.
I know that the Nazis came to put my dad in prison at one point, and these are the postcards, I think, when my dad was in jail. My mom said, one of the Nazis who really liked my mom, he'd sneak him in. I really would like to go to Austria. I would like to know how they got out or why they got out. Were they scared? Were they told to get out? I don't know.
Ruby's parents, Edmund Vax and Berta Goldman, both came from Vienna. Now Ruby is traveling there to uncover their story.
I have no feeling of being Jewish. It wasn't really mentioned a lot. I don't even watch films about the Holocaust.
Ruby reads little German and will need help to decipher the documents and photographs from her mother's suitcase.
These are 1938. I don't really know how difficult it was to be a Jew here at that particular time. My dad told me he stowed away on a ship that was going to America. I don't know if that's really true. But they did get him and put him in prison. But I have no idea what he was doing in prison. It didn't seem too hard. He did say it was a big adventure. I think he mentioned being in charge of aerobics. I have the address of the prison here. It's Rotzalande Polizei Fangerhaus.
Ruby has come to the address on her postcard, the police jail where her father was held, to see if she can discover how he ended up in prison. She has arranged to meet historian Dr. Eleanor Lappin-Eppel.
Hello.
Hello, hi Ruby.
Hi.
I'm Eleanor.
Hi, Eleanor.
This is the prison where your father was kept.
Oh, for how long?
2 months at least. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened to your father, but let's go to a coffee house.
Okay.
Yes?
All right. These are letters I found in the attic in my parents' suitcase when they left Vienna, but I can't actually read them.
Now, this letter was written by your mother to your father while he was in prison.
What year are we?
You see, this is in 1938. When you look at these dates, this is about 6-7 weeks after the invasion.
On the 12th of March 1938, the Nazis seized power in Austria. 2 days later, Adolf Hitler made a triumphant entry into Vienna, greeted by vast, cheering crowds. Even before he arrived, the attacks on Viennese Jews had begun.
As soon as the Nazis entered Austria, there was an incredible outburst of violence by Austrian Nazis.
Just from literally one day to the next. There was no warning of that.
And one day, violence started right away. They really had the feeling the Germans are here, and now the Jews will get it. And they assaulted Jews, they humiliated them, they beat them up. And what was even worse was that it was not safe for them at home either. Neighbors or complete strangers would come to the house and rob them. Or even sometimes Jews were kicked out of their apartments.
And the Jews weren't expecting that.
No, no.
Why was my dad put in prison?
Your father was arrested because he was a Jew. And there was no good reason. I have a proof here. I have the translation of one of the cards your mother wrote. Please read the translation.
This is a translation of this?
Yes.
Dear Mundi, that was what she called him. I'm at yours every day, and not a minute in the day goes by without me thinking about you, with tears in my eyes. I hope that you are fairly well and that I will see you again soon. You will probably be allowed to leave soon. You haven't done anything after all. When you come, you will be getting something nice to eat. What did they do to him in the prison? He said he taught aerobics.
Oh, come on. The Jewish prisoners were tortured. And one of the things they had to do was so-called gymnastics, like jumping through the room on your, with your knees bent, yes, climbing up walls, beating each other. And whenever they refused, they refused to do this, they were beaten by their guards.
But my dad said he was leading the class.
Maybe they forced him to jump ahead of all of the others. He was a young man. I'm sure that he was in better physical shape than a 65-year-old old man who also had to jump. So
it was torture? I thought
it was torture and humiliation. Look, there were people jumping out of the window, committing suicide, because it was just unbearable what went on there.
So my dad, how did he actually get out of prison?
Here's a letter that explains how he got out.
Oh, it's from my dad.
Yeah.
Dear Minister, I've been in prison for 2 months in Vienna by the Gestapo. After being freed, I had to sign a document that I would immediately leave the country. Why did he sign the document?
If he didn't leave Austria in time, the punishment was being sent to Dachau straight away. Dachau was a concentration camp with terrible brutality. As long as your father was in prison here, he was under threat of being deported to Dachau.
Do you think he was scared?
They wanted to scare the Jews and to get him to leave the country as soon as possible. So at this time, if he could prove that he can leave the country right away or in the near future, he would be released.
Ruby's father was freed by July 1938. The Nazi policy was to force as many Jews as possible to leave Austria. But fearing a flood of refugees, many countries restricted entry. Ruby's father was one of the lucky ones. He obtained a visa to go to Belgium. Before he left Vienna, he was able to return home and hastily marry Ruby's mother, Bertha.
So there's one more thing that I think might be interesting for you.
Yeah.
And that's the address where your father and his family lived. He's living in the 3rd district,
Yeah.
Weisgerberlände 10, and he's a dealer of intestines, a merchant of intestines.
A merchant of intestines. That's almost Shakespearean.
Yes.
The merchant of intestines.
Yes.
First of all, I had no idea that my mother loved my dad. Saying she cried every day, I had no idea that they really loved each other. That's a surprise. And then my dad told me he was the aerobics coach. I didn't understand that they were being tortured. You know, he always said I was really young, so it was an adventure. It must have been wild. Why didn't he tell me anything? What did he think my reaction would be?
The block where Ruby's father lived before he fled Vienna in 1938 still stands. Inside, Ruby has come to see an empty apartment, almost identical to the one her father lived in.
Wow. Well, it's not small, so they weren't poor. So you think he was pulled out of here and dragged off? I wonder if he thought they were going to kill him. Well, there must have been panic.
Historian Professor Tony Kushner is meeting Ruby here to help her discover how her father escaped the country.
Hi, nice to meet you. So my dad escaped and went to Belgium. So how did he get to Belgium?
Refugee journeys are very rarely straightforward. And in this case, it's particularly complicated. So this first document shows that he's been successful in not only getting out of Austria, but also reaching his first place of moving on, hopefully, towards America.
Is that my dad? Oh, my God.
This says that he is now in Belgium. What these documents are about are registering with the Belgian police.
How did he end up in Belgium?
We know he has to leave Vienna quickly, and what he's doing is going an unusual route of travel, which he's going to fly.
I love that he went by plane. That was unusual.
It's unusual for anyone to get on an aeroplane in the 1930s, let alone someone who's a desperate refugee.
Ruby's father travelled alone, flying from Vienna to Prague and on to Rotterdam in the Netherlands. He crossed the border into Belgium by train.
The chances are that he would have flown with one of the largest European companies, Sabina. This is the luxury end of the market. This is selling a lifestyle. This is way before the cheap airlines of today.
How much was the flight?
I think in today's currency, we're talking about £2,000.
An expensive plane fare gave Ruby's father a chance of a safe passage across Europe. Jews were allowed to buy tickets and travel supplies. Money and valuables were to be left behind. But Ruby's father seems to have managed to keep some of his money out of Nazi hands.
There is talk in some of the documents of a Belgian bank account.
Yeah.
Somehow he's got money out of Austria.
Was it illegal?
It may have been not fully kosher.
Yeah, not kosher. That's a good word.
He has enough chutzpah to do this.
I'm so proud. He was charming. He knew how to charm people out of their pants.
So he's in Belgium for the better part of a year. He has not got a straightforward route to America. He's got some of the paperwork, so he's stranded there. The back of his mind is worried that they may deport him back to Austria, which would be a total disaster.
But he was savvy.
He's certainly willing to take risks.
Yeah, I'm very much like that. So he told me he stowed away on a ship and he dressed as an American with a fedora. Do you think he stowed away for the whole journey, like under a lifeboat?
From various documents, we know that he did stow away, that he didn't have a legal ticket. And that is remarkable and very rare. Stowing away isn't an everyday occurrence. It's possible he sneaked on board or that he bribed his way at the port. The problem is going to be when he arrives.
Yeah.
If he is caught, then he could be deported again.
So they didn't want Jews in the United States?
There's a huge section of American society that is hostile to immigrants and hostile to Jewish refugees particularly.
So what about my mother? Did she get out first?
Your father leaves in September 1938.
Right.
Berta is left in Vienna on her own.
Right.
She has relatively close relatives in Chicago, and that is going to strengthen her case to get a visa to America. She goes via Belgium. She would have probably got there by train and then on to the States.
Look how beautiful. I heard that she got on the train and like Nazis stood up because she looked so Aryan.
Well, I think it shows the absolute lunacy of Nazi race science, that they have an image of the Jew which doesn't bear any resemblance to the reality. There's something very significant about this document. It's the date that is, I think, very revealing. It's dated the 16th of December 1938. Now, this is significant because in terms of the persecution of the Jews, we've already passed another milestone, and a really horrendous one. That on the 9th and 10th of November 1938, not just in Germany, but also in Austria, we have the Kristallnacht pogrom.
What does Kristallnacht mean?
It means the night of the broken glass.
Kristallnacht was a series of orchestrated attacks across the German Reich, targeting Jewish businesses, homes and synagogues. Jews were beaten and thousands arrested. The attacks in Vienna were particularly brutal.
She never mentioned it. She never mentioned, oh, by the way, I was there for Kristallnacht. I thought that happened, after they were here. Do you think that explains why she was out of her mind?
I think it didn't help that there's a sense of dislocation, of loss, but also of trauma.
She was hysterical and neurotic. And I don't know if everybody who experienced this, their personalities would change like that. I understand trauma, but then she lived till 90. Was she in a state of trauma for that many years? A whole life wasted.
In November 1938, Ruby's mother Berta was a new bride, but her husband had already fled Vienna. Ruby wants to see the synagogue where her parents married.
I know my parents got married here because I have the documents, and I got some pictures of what it used to look like. also Temple Gaza. Where is it? This? That doesn't look anything like the picture. Where is it? It's not here. Where did it go? Where is the temple?
3 months after Ruby's parents married in the Leopoldstadt temple, it was completely destroyed on Kristallnacht.
I didn't realize my mother saw Kristallnacht when the Jews really were being ripped apart. She must have been terrified. If my mother had once mentioned what happened, it would have broken every barrier down. I would have had compassion. The parents that I had when I was growing up do not relate at all to what I'm finding out. They are completely different people. I just thought they were monsters. Now I get it that she was 24. Clearly she was traumatized, but just give me a clue. She became a kind of ingrown toenail, a housewife that was so angry, but I couldn't figure out, was she bitter about me? That's what I thought. One conversation, if she had broken down in tears and said, here's what I left, my heart would have bled for her. I had no idea. Doesn't mean I forgive them completely, because I think just give me one conversation. One day of crying would have done it.
Now she knows how her parents escaped from Vienna, Ruby wants to investigate some mysterious letters belonging to her mother.
These letters come out of my mother's suitcase. It's in the attic. And they're all from Ella and Salo. And they're from about 1941. So I can imagine what was going on. The question would be, who are these people? And are they related to me? That's what I want to know. Wow. Iftigma Vienna is spectacular. And if you had to leave this, you'd be furious.
Ruby has come to meet genealogist Gregor Britzina to find out more about Ella and Salo.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
You too. I found these letters from Ella and Salo in my mother's suitcase. So are they related to me?
I can show you the connection between you and them on a family tree. I will start with your parents.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was Edmund.
And Berta.
And then your grandparents were Julia and Richard Goldman.
Ruby's maternal grandparents were Julia and Richard Goldman. And Richard's father was Salomon Goldman. Richard had 2 siblings, a younger sister called Olga and an older sister, Gabriella, who married Salomon Bira.
These 2 guys are Salo and Ella.
So they were my mother's aunt and uncle.
That's right.
I got these photographs, but I don't know who any of them are. So maybe you could help me. Who are these people?
Well, maybe you should take a look on the
back?
on the back side. Sometimes.
Oh, this is Goldman. Oh, this is my grandfather. Oh, wow.
That's Richard Goldman.
Mm-hmm. And then who are these people?
Maybe you see a resemblance.
Oh, God, yeah, there's Richard again. He's really good looking. And he married a woman with a bird on her head. So that's my grandmother?
That's right.
Wow. Okay, so who are the other ones?
Let's take a look.
So let's see. Could this be my grandfather?
I think so, yes. Richard Goldman.
Oh, my God. And so are these his sisters? And which one's Ella?
The older sister, that's Gabriella,
Sis.
was, I think, sitting.
So when Ella was writing the letters in 1941, what did she do for a living?
Well, I can show you on this directory here. And it's very detailed because also their occupations were here noticed. If we take a look at Gabriella Bierer, you see in this line, Gabrielle.
All right.
Yeah. And that's...
What did she do?
That's Zahntechnikerin, that means dental technician.
She was a dental technician.
That's right.
Okay.
And if you look a little down
Okay, next one. There's Solomon.
Here,
Yeah.
yeah.
And what was he?
You see here Zahntechniker.
He was a
That's the same.
dental technician.
That's right, they were both.
That's so not interesting. They both were dental technicians.
That's right.
I always dreamt that, you know, rocket scientists. But somebody had to be a dental technician.
Of course.
Were they working in the same dental office?
That's right, they were
Oh
working
my
at the
God,
same...
well then they met there, over the teeth.
That's possible, yeah, that's possible because the dental
Thing is in the same place.
is in the same place. You see here,
Yeah.
it says Karmeliterplatz.
So when Ella was writing the letters, how old was she then?
Well, she was 65. She was born in 1876, and she was then 65.
And then how old was her husband when they were writing
He
it
was
out?
69 at that time.
Right,
Maybe you should go to their house at Karmeliterplatz 1.
right.
By 1941, Ruby's parents were safely in the United States. But as war raged across Europe, Ruby's great-aunt and uncle, Ella and Salo Bira, remained trapped in Vienna. Ruby is meeting historian Dr. Doron Rabinovich, who has been looking at the letters they sent to Ruby's mother.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Great to meet you.
Where are we going to
Let's
sit?
take a seat here.
Okay. Ella and Salo lived here?
Yes.
Is there practice here too?
Here she was a dentist. Here was her dental office.
Why did he not work?
Well, I think he was already older and might have not worked anymore.
Right. I have the letters that they wrote from 1941.
Yes.
Can you tell me what they say?
I have here the translations
All right.
to these letters. This is 41.
Right. And they're writing from here?
They're writing
To
from
America.
here. Right. This is from Ella.
To all my most beloveds, you two are my everything in this world. Uncle Salo is very thin, and also I, although I'm very happy about it. Also, I'm finding it now easier to breathe. I'm going to 2 English lessons a week. I'm not as focused as my 70-year-old schoolmates, though.
So you see, when she writes that they are already thin, the reason is this is the time of war, and Jews don't get more but less. And it is also clear that they are now planning to get away, and they go to learn English because they hope to come out and to get to the United States.
By 1941, Jews in Vienna were no longer allowed many foods like milk and eggs and could only shop at certain hours. Their businesses had been seized or closed, and most were now unemployed. Their bank accounts were frozen. All the remaining Jews were forced into certain districts of Vienna, and Ella and Salo had to share their apartment with other families.
And now the trains start. Every other week, 1,000 leave
Aye.
with deportation trains.
And did they know they were death camps?
No, they didn't know that there were death camps, but they knew that the place they are going through are ghettos where the situation is much worse than Vienna.
By the middle of 1941, almost 130,000 Jews had already fled Vienna, and thousands more had been transported by the Nazis. Ella and Salo's only hope was to join the queues trying to get a foreign visa. To join their family in America, they would need an affidavit, a statement from their relatives that they would be willing to provide them with financial support.
May 8th, 41. My dearest, we are very worried and concerned because we haven't had a message from you in so long, and also that we haven't received the promised affidavit yet. You can't even imagine how afraid we are. We are almost always at home, and it is very boring and sad.
They are always at home because the situation gets worse and worse on the streets.
And if they wanted to take a walk, like to go outside, what would...
They can go outside, but every encounter is dangerous for her. So, yes, she knows that she's in a trap, and when she goes out, she's always under threat.
So how long has my mother not answered her? Like a month?
The problem with the affidavit is that you have to ensure certain things for the government. It is very difficult to get together all the papers.
It took another 6 weeks before Ella received the affidavit from Ruby's mother. But just as it arrived, the United States changed the rules. New information was required, which was missing from Ella and Salo's affidavit. And in July 1941, the US consulate in Vienna was closed.
So let's see what happens next.
Okay, so then August
5th.
5th, 1941. We are very aggrieved about the new regulations subject of the affidavits. If, God forbid, we will not be able to travel to you, it will cost us our lives. Please help us further. Do not leave us behind.
What happens is that the United States don't want to let Jews in. And on the 23rd of October, there's a law, a new law in the German Reich. And the new law says that every emigration is forbidden.
Right, so now they're stuck.
Now they're stuck. It is a situation where it is too late.
That's the last letter?
That's the last letter.
How can I find out what happened to them finally?
I would go to the internet and search in the archives. There is, for instance, the website of Yad Vashem, which is very good, and I would suppose there you'll find out everything.
Can you figure out why my mother never mentioned this to me? In 40 years, wouldn't you have mentioned it to your daughter?
It can be understandable that somebody doesn't speak about things that is very painful. It seems to me, from the first letter on, that there was a very strong attachment, a strong bond. This was a very close relationship. I know that there are things human beings don't want to talk about.
Sitting outside the dentist's office, and they were writing those letters inside. I can't imagine. A, being hungry and locked inside. B, going outside and people you know beating you up and then taunting you. I would have jumped out the window.
Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center, maintains an online database recording the fate of Jews in the Second World War. Ruby is searching here for her great-aunt and uncle.
Birrerssalomon. I'm doing it because of a macabre sense of curiosity. Deported with Transport 28 from Vienna, Austria, to Theresienstadt, Ghetto, Czechoslovakia. Solomon was murdered in the Shoah, the Holocaust. Oh. Okay. All righty. Does this say what happened to the L, too? Gabrielle. Gabriele. Ah, yeah, she got murdered, too. I can't believe somebody in my family was murdered. I just thought that, my family were so smart that they'd get out. But the fact that she was older, my age. You know what's good is that I'm on medication so that I don't feel things as deeply as maybe somebody else would. Now, for 20 years, I've been on medication, so I'm really happy about that. Because this would have flipped me out.
Ruby is traveling to the Czech Republic in search of answers about her great-aunt and uncle's fate.
sitting on this train. I can just imagine this train being packed with Jews, not knowing where they were going. Maybe these tracks were built to bring Jews to the concentration camps or to the ghettos. This gives me the creeps.
Ruby is meeting historian Dr. Anna Haikova, an expert on Theresienstadt.
Hi,
I'm Anna Haikova.
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So, can I ask you a question?
Of course, this is why I'm here.
Okay, so these tracks, is this where the trains would have come in?
Yes, Ella and Zalo were on the very first transport from Vienna to Theresienstadt. They arrived here actually almost at the same time of the year as is now. They arrived on June 20th, 1942. They had to walk the 2 kilometers.
It's 2 kilometers?
Yes, and with their luggage. And maybe it's best when we now go and have a look for ourselves.
Yeah,
Okay, let's go.
Okay.
Before the Second World War, Theresienstadt was a small Czech town.
This is a long, long walk.
The Nazis turned it into a ghetto, and in 1942 the residents were moved out to make room for tens of thousands of elderly Jews from Berlin and Vienna. Ruby's great-aunt and uncle, Ella and Salo, among them. Completely surrounded by fortifications, Theresienstadt was the ideal prison town.
Do people live here now?
Yes, they do. Some of the people who were expelled in 42 were able to return in 1945.
What would make somebody come back to the place where they were, you know?
But this is the place where they used to live. This was their home. They were expelled, and after 3 years, they were able to come back.
How many Jews were here?
Altogether, some 140,000
In this town?
in this town.
Theresienstadt was a ghetto. Unlike an extermination camp, there were no gas chambers, no uniforms, and it was run by a Jewish administration, under direction from the SS.
A lot of the elderly are accommodated in places that were still empty because nobody had wanted to live there before. Here you have a picture
Oh my God.
of one of the attics with the elderly.
What about Solomon and Ella?
While we do not know where they were accommodated, we can speculate, and this is a hard speculation, that they were put in one of those horrible attics. There was no electricity, there were no windows, there was no running water. Indeed, there were no even toilets. There is an epidemic of basically of diarrhea, of enteritis,
Oh my
that
God.
a lot of people, especially the elderly, die from. You do not need to have gas chambers in order to participate in the genocide. There were no gas chambers in Theresienstadt, yet people were murdered nevertheless.
So what happened to my great uncle and aunt?
There is a document which is daily order from June 29, 1942, and if you look at the second page, you will find a list of all the people who died on June 27th.
Okay, Simon Beer, but there he is. So he only made it a week?
He only made it a week. Like so many elderly, he died very quickly.
And then Ella, is she in here? Well, she's not under Bira. I don't see her name. I guess the list is longer. That's just that day.
Unfortunately, we do not know what happened to Ella. We know that she arrived on June 20th, 1942. It's the first transport from Vienna, but we do not know what happens to her next.
33,000 Jews died here of disease and starvation. Many more were deported from here to extermination camps at Auschwitz and Treblinka.
It looks like such a perfect village, so I can't really get it in my head that these people were smashed into an attic and then left to die. I can't imagine that horror, and I'm just happy that my great-uncle died in a week. And then Ella, I hope she didn't go to Auschwitz, but she died, and nobody knows where she died.
Now Ruby wants to find out more about the other people in her photograph. Ella's brother Richard, Ruby's grandfather, and younger sister Olga. Ruby knows that both Olga and Richard died before the war and that they were buried in the Central Cemetery in Vienna. She has returned to the city to search for their graves.
Oh, find a grave. My hands are shaking here. Goldman Richard, Cemetery, Austria. Search. Plot 1 TOR 1927A. $21. Oh no, is this the little one? Oh my God, my grandfather. And my great-grandfather. But who takes care of this? I mean, do you think I should? Because somebody has to take care of it. I see. The heart-aching thing is, did my mother bury him? You sort of get the idea that this is like a bloodline that goes all the way to me, but nobody said anything. I wish my kids could see this. Okay. So let me see where Olga is.
To find Olga's grave, Ruby is meeting Chaim Tetrashvili, who performs Jewish burials at the cemetery.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Chaim.
Hi, Ruby.
Hi.
Can you show me where this is?
Of course.
Okay, thanks. Is it complicated?
Not at all. We just have to walk to row 19, but 76 is on the other end. We have to go through here.
Okay.
The person you're looking for is
Goldman.
Olga. So as you can see here, the neighbors
Yeah.
are Dermer Josephine and Reiter Hirsch Israel, and Goldman Olga is
Right.
exactly in the middle.
She doesn't have a grave?
She have a grave, she don't have a stone.
Right. Can I buy her a stone?
You can buy her a stone if you like.
Who would have buried her
This
without
is a
a
good
stone?
question. For that, I bought a card, the dead card from the archive.
The
to
dead
see-
card?
Yeah, the dead card. And this is the day when she passed away. It was the 24th of February, 1933.
33.
It's category 5. It means this is for the social section, for the people who had no money, had no family. So they were...
But she did have family.
Okay, but I don't know. And here it's standing only where she was, her last address. And the last address is called, this is the 13th district. And this is Am Steinhof.
Is that a bad area?
Am Steinhof is actually a psychiatric hospital.
Oh, okay.
And this place is still existing till today.
The psychiatric hospital?
Yeah, it's now a very big hospital.
Well, I would obviously like to know what she was doing in a psychiatric hospital.
I think you can even visit there.
And is
if
it
you
a
like.
psychiatric hospital?
Now it's even bigger. They have the psychiatric section and they have also other section there.
Right.
It's a very big place. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for this, showing me this.
Of course, nothing to thank.
I would have never known.
Yeah.
In Vienna's leafy suburbs, Am Steinhof Psychiatric Hospital is now known as the Otto Wagner Spital, after the architect who designed it.
So I'm in Steinhof Psychiatric Hospital. So far, it looks like the Priory.
Ruby is meeting historian Dr. Sabine Weber to find out about her great-aunt Olga's time here.
Hello.
Hello, Ruby. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Hi.
Come on in with me.
Thank you. So tell me where we are.
So we are physically sitting on the balcony of one of the pavilions at the mental hospital am Steinhof. So this is a watercolor of Steinhof in 1907. So you can see we've got 60 pavilions that make up this institution for the care and the cure of the mentally ill. It was designed for 2,500 patients. We are in this pavilion right here.
Is Olga in here?
We don't know if she was in this very pavilion. We are actually at the top of the institution, which is where the agitated patients would have been hospitalized.
Agitated?
Yes. Agitated, meaning that the symptoms of their mental illness were such that they had behaviors that needed to be managed. They were
But are we saying
agitated.
screaming, agitation?
Yes, we're
Okay.
screaming, violence.
My mother did that. Screaming in the street. See, I always wonder, was it Vienna or was it, genes? And so when somebody's institutionalized here, how do they cure them?
Depending on their behaviors, there was something called the bath therapy. The patients who were very agitated stayed in there for a really long time.
Like days?
Days. So they would be sleeping in there, they would be eating in there. And
What was the point of the water?
to basically calm them down. So if you were an agitated patient, it was a lot about managing symptoms.
Okay, and then what else was there?
And then there was work therapy. So the individuals institutionalized would actually be employed in the kitchen or on the farm.
And so do you think my great aunt could do that?
She was a seamstress. I don't
was
know
a
if you knew
seamstress.
that.
No.
Yeah, she was probably working as a seamstress in the institution.
So how bad was it for Olga? What brought her here?
Would you maybe like to have a look at this document right here?
Well, she would be Goldman. Oh, Goldman,
There
here.
you are, yes. So this is last place of residence before she came to Steinhof.
Okay, so the last place of residence is Asylum Brunn.
So that's Bruno. So that is in Moravia.
Moravia.
So
But didn't the family live in Vienna? Why is she in Moravia?
that's where she was born.
Ruby's great-aunt Olga's official home was her place of birth in Moravia, now part of the Czech Republic. So when she became ill, she was sent to the asylum closest to where she was born, in the town of Brno. It took her family several years to get her moved back to Vienna, to the Steinhof.
She entered Brno at age 24, and then she transferred here 5 years later. And what stands out to you, even just visually in this record?
That she died in 1933.
She died on the 24th of February. So she was first institutionalized in 1903. So she's there for 5 years. And 25 years she was here, and she died here.
30 years in an institution?
Given the fact that Olga was institutionalized pretty much her entire adult life, we know that she was an incurable mental patient. So we cannot say what exactly her mental illness was, but it was a severe condition. But, I don't want to leave you with this utter sense of sadness and despair about Olga, because I think having been in the institution for so many years, because she was a seamstress, she was probably able to continue working. She was able to carve out a life here, not a life of freedom as we think of it, but I wouldn't say that it was a complete despair-ridden life she lived here.
I asked originally, is there madness in my family? I thought either madness or an actress, or both. So I got one.
Yeah. We've seen that she was in Brno from 1903 onwards, so it might be worthwhile to think about going to the archives in Brno to find out more about that part of your family story than of Olga's story.
I don't know if my mother, of course she would have known that for 30 years my great aunt was in a mental institution, but maybe there was such shame and that they call it agitation. Like she had a scratch. She must have been howling here. And my mom did that at home. I bet my mother had what she had. You know it in every cell in your body. It's only because I have a sense of humor that I'm not in this place.
Ruby wants to make one last journey to Moravia in the Czech Republic to see if she can discover more about Olga's time there. At the Moravian Land Archive, she has arranged to meet archivist Dr. Lenka Matuszykova, who has been studying the records of the Brno Asylum.
I just wanted to know if you knew anything else about Olga.
Sorry, we didn't find any record about her stay here, but what I have found are some other information which I would like just now to show you.
Okay.
It's the protocol.
What does it mean, protocol?
Protocol means like a book of the people who were under the care of
yeah.
in this asylum.
Inmates, we call it.
Yeah. For these years, 1883 till 1894.
Okay, so it says 5919.
Yeah,
and
it's
then,
number.
And then, oh, Goldman. Mm-hmm. And that's, what's that first name?
Berta.
That's my mother.
It's your great-grandmother.
My great-grandmother was Berta, too?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Yeah?
Was she in an asylum?
Yes, she was in an asylum.
Oh, my God. I knew this was down my family line. So my great-grandmother was in the asylum?
Yeah.
This is surreal.
Yes, and she died in this asylum.
So how old was she?
When she died, was about 31.
And what did she die of?
She died on tuberculosis.
Ruby's great-grandmother, Berta Goldman, was committed to Brno Insane Asylum in 1884, 19 years before her daughter Olga was sent to the same institution. It was notoriously overcrowded and disease was rife. Berta died after just 7 months.
We found for you something else. Just try to read this one.
It's a Vienna newspaper, August 21, 1884. The wife of an agent, Berta Goldman, in Ottakring yesterday morning, sold all her furniture and left her house, expressing her intention to commit suicide in a written letter. Is that why they took her away?
Yes, so they took her before she was able to commit suicide.
Well, she didn't have a good life, did she? Can I just ask a question? In the newspaper they put she was going to commit suicide?
Yes.
Why would they put that in the newspaper?
I don't know why they do it. It's like a sensation that that there was a letter and then the person sold the furniture and left the house and left such a letter.
What the kids must have known.
Yes,
Olga must have known.
I think that the kids must know.
Do you know how old they would have all been when their mother died?
So the Olga could be about 6 years old.
Okay, and then Ella?
About 9 years, and he...
Richard, my mom's
might be about
father.
8 or 7.
Oh. Well, my great-grandmother and my great-aunt were taken to the same asylum.
Yes.
It's a
yes. Yes.
Yeah. I was going to say something funny, but I can't.
So it's not funny.
No, it's not funny. Yeah. Does the asylum still exist?
Yes, the asylum still exists. You can visit it if you would like.
Is it still an asylum?
Yes, it is still an asylum. Would you like to visit it?
Yeah. this is, I never thought I would say this, where my great-grandmother and my great-aunt were institutionalized. You would think that I would feel, you know, sad or, I don't know, overcome by the tragedy of the whole thing, but just the atmosphere here is so soothing. To be around other people in a similar situation that's just, I'm glad she was in here rather than having to roam the real world. I'm sad that she was sick, but I know when I go in these places, this is paradise compared to being outside and unrestrained. I love it. Why do they have to call it madness? I would call it a place of rest for the agitated. I think that's more flattering. Yes, I'm agitated. That's such a much better word. You know, I could have saved myself a lot of time and money. Rather than doing therapy, I should have been doing genealogy. Now knowing my ancestors, I understand a lot more about myself. My past was involved in an insane asylum, and it's such a relief knowing that my mother was agitated, just like my great-aunt and my great-grandmother. We were all agitated. It helps me understand why I have this feeling of panic. So I'll get a headstone for Olga, and then I'll get another one for Bertha, and I'll just say, these were pioneer women, and how proud I am of them for surviving as long as they did.